Welcome everyone to the Orange County Rapid Response Network trainings. We're so happy that you all are going to be joining us for the summer for July. Every Thursday from 6:30 to 7:30, we are hosting these trainings to build capacity for rapid response networks in Orange County, but then across the country and more specifically in Southern California. For this first set of for today's first training, we have Introduction to Participatory Defense. Can we go on to the next slide, Anna? Great. So some of the goals for the training is to learn how volunteers or first responders can embrace a participatory defense model in rapid response work, and then also just share collective knowledge and skills. These are some of the community agreements that we've laid out. So maybe I'll pause here for 20 seconds just for folks to catch up to the community agreements, to review them one more time. Great, next slide, introductions. So these are just some of the introductory questions that we've asked of each other. Next slide. Here is our mission and vision of the Rapid Response Network. Great, and then Anna, if you can start.
Yeah, so this video that we're going to be showing specifically highlights participatory defense and how a collective, Mothers in Charge specifically in Philadelphia, have embraced this community organizing model. So we'll be playing a little bit of it. So let me go ahead and do it.
My name is Dorothy Johnson Spite, and I'm founder and executive director of Mothers in Charge. Mothers in Charge is a grassroots, community-based organization that's comprised mostly of mothers, grandmothers, aunts, and sisters who've lost a son, daughter, or loved one to violence. Mothers in Charge became the vehicle to help me to be able to breathe after the death of my only son and my firstborn. So it was a way that I could handle and manage my anger and my tears and sadness and all of my emotions. So I, along with a couple other moms, wanted to make a difference on the issue of violence. And that's how Mothers in Charge was started. I have a good friend, Andrea James, who is the founder of the National Council of Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. And several months ago, she called me up and she says, you've got to, learn and hear all about this new program, this new initiative that we're doing. It's called Participatory Defense. And I thought it was a phenomenal idea to help empower families who have loved ones that are caught up in the criminal justice system. There's so many families that are impacted by the criminal justice system mainly because they don't understand the system. And participatory defense empowers them to understand this system that is foreign to many of us, So we empower families to get the best outcomes. In fact, our Mothers in Charge participatory defense is called Best Outcomes. And that's what we are hoping to do. We're not lawyers or paralegals or anybody like that, but we're a community group that's concerned about the community. I mean, people are coming and we're helping support them, helping them to understand, the process that they've got to go through for their loved ones. It's just, an amazing group of volunteers who work to help and support those families that come to us. We've helped people do their social bios and things that they need when they're going to, be in front of a judge or something like that. And that judge needs to know who they really are. And help families. They're oftentimes devastated. So if we're able to impart some knowledge and support them in ways that, they get a better outcome, then that's what we want to do across this country.
I was what they call, now they have a term, juvenile lifers. I served 42 years in prison. I got out April 1st, 2017. I came to Mothers in Charge, I believe, in May, the following month. Mothers in Charge is dealing with reentry. That's why participatory defense is so important because now we're on the other end of the problem. It allows people from the community to be involved. So you have this wealth of information coming together that can assist a person, because that's what people really need. And I see this process as being revolutionary.
Since I've been home 6.5 years ago, I've been employed with Mothers in Charge.
Yes, I think that's just a little introduction
reentry.
into participatory defense and how it's been embraced by a hub in Philadelphia. And there's different hubs throughout the nation. So in Orange County, I think that we came to embrace this model out of necessity. And I think that, you know, I will just leave it at that, kind of an introduction. We'll have Roberto share a little bit more. How is it that we even got here? Because that's definitely a story that is very important to tell as we talk about doing and embracing this model in Orange County. So let me go ahead and pass it over to Roberto to share some of those histories.
Great, yes. So I just wanted to lay down some, a little bit about sort of where immigrant rights movement has been in OC, starting with Orange County Dream Team in 2004, and sort of, you know, the larger narrative around the Dreamer movement and sort of how that really took hold of the, you know, trying for youth, immigrant youth really trying to take hold of their narrative, and you know, pushing that forward. And so, you know, that was back in, at least in Orange County in 2004. And then, you know, moving forward to 2011 was when Raíz was an organization that kind of sprouted up in response to the criminalization of community members, you know, at the expense, you know, this good versus bad immigrant narrative. You know, there was folks that there were, you know, there's some folks that benefited and other folks that allowed for the criminalization of folks. And you know, Raíz was directly talking about the criminalization, you know, throughout this the sort of Dreamer narrative, and comprehensive immigration reform. And, you know, talking about how local law enforcement is collaborating with ICE and how the sheriff's department and police departments play a role in the deportation machine. So, you know, bringing up that consciousness locally. You know, and I think it got to a point really where, you know, folks that were in the movement came to understand and recognize and center the criminalization of community members. And you know, Orange County Dream Team, a lot of the Dream Teams really transitioned across the state in California to be more centered and recognize the sort of good versus bad immigrant narrative. OCDT turned into OCIYU in 2014, Raíz, you know, in 2011, and then in 2016 turned into Resilience Orange County. So these were sort of the two organizations primarily that were, you know, involved locally around addressing deportation defense and helping to push policy advocacy at the local level. And then, you know, we did see the sort of, you know, the rise of Trump, and also I want to take one step back, the Not One More campaign that was launched in 2013 really kind of elevated at the national level, like everyone to be on the same page. There's a lot of history that I'm not mentioning here that is like, you know, at least like national, statewide, local within each of your own regions, you know, but, you know, I think a lot of this stuff really needs to be documented. So I just, at least for Orange County context, this is kind of this is how it sort of worked out. And then, you know, moving forward to the rise of Trump and immigration enforcement and its apparatus and crimmigration, you know, like these local systems working more, and information sharing, you know, facilitation of information sharing, allowing for the expansion of detention and deportations. And so that was, you know, there was a need in Orange County to really, you know, start to address these detention and deportations in a way that, you know, how do we build community capacity? How do we come together to start to intervene in these processes? So in June of 2017 is when the Orange County Rapid Response Network kind of came to be. some of the previous deportation defense organizers, I just want to name them. Alexis, Teodoro, Carlos Perea, Fabi, Jacome. These are folks that, you know, aren't engaged directly with helping community members, you know, anymore through these processes, but they are folks that have been involved. We have a new generation of participatory defense organizers, including myself, Anna, Sandra, Gabby, Emily, Mal, Sonali, Michelle, Felicity, Yvonne, Adriana. These are kind of folks that are really, like, you know, taking up this work of doing participatory defense in rapid response work. So, you know, since 2017, we've been building and building and building, and now we're kind of, you know, we're ready. And there's like 90 callers on this call right now. So we're like, we're hoping that you all stay plugged into our work and continue to expand and push back. You know, there's so much uncertainty that is happening for 2020, and all we can anticipate is that either of these candidates are not going to stand hard against ICE, right? And so we need to do the job of holding local law enforcement accountable, police departments accountable for their, you know, for them conspiring with ICE. So, you know, participatory defense for Orange County started off around youth cases. So Resilience Orange County was supporting youth that were going through the criminal justice system, the juvenile justice system. And, you know, we see a lot, even now, how police, you know, how budgets are shaped and how a majority of the budgets go to police, and how the criminalization of youth leads them to this deportation pipeline, you know. And so youth cases from, you know, BMOC and Resilience Orange County started from 2014 to 2017. I want to name some of the youth: Jesus, Juan, Jesus, Cesar, Charlie. These are all folks that were, you know, we had supported through participatory defense, you know, through the lens of youth. It wasn't until May and June 2019 that we started to incorporate participatory defense in rapid response. And so Anna and Mao, who are on this call, you know, went to go to learn from Debug. And they're sort of a big, you know, they're the sort of hub of like that convenes folks, that helps teach folks about participatory defense. So, you know, we can only speak about participatory defense in our capacity. You know, they're the real teachers, and you know, I think it's all of us sort of bring a piece to the conversation about participatory defense. And so, yeah, so now rapid response is, as we know it today in Orange County, is through a participatory defense model. And I think that's all I have to say about, you know, the histories.
Yes, and something else that I think I'm just going to add, and this is Sana. I think that when it comes to rapid response, one of the things that we often talk about in the group is that the need for legal representation is always there. And I apologize for the freaking sound on the background, but the need for legal representation and legal immigration services has always been there. And I think there isn't enough attorneys or folks that are able to provide that support to community members. So I think that participatory defense really comes in to change that dynamic of, we don't necessarily have to rely so much on the legal side of the case. Or like, how can I say that? Like, we can do so much as a community to intervene in someone's case that the attorney obviously would be important to facilitate some of the legal strategy. But as a community, we can do so much to impact an outcome of a case. And so we understand that that limitation, trying to meet the need of legal services, isn't there. So as a community, we have to take it upon ourselves to really have each other's back and support each other in the process. So I think I just wanted to mention that, but we'll delve into a little bit more, defining what are the principles of participatory defense, what are the values that we center, so that all of you can get a sense of like where we're coming from, because I feel like right now we're just touching over the surface. But before we get into those conversations, we just want to give folks a break for a couple of minutes. So as we get into the break, I'm just gonna play this video for the next couple of minutes, and I'm gonna shut my door because I apologize for that sound. But if folks wanna take like a 3-4 minute break, you can go ahead and do that. In the meantime, I'll play this and we'll come back as soon as it's done playing.
Motives and thoughts. Rotating bodies, confusion of sound, negative imagery holding us down, social delusion, clearly constructed, human condition, morals corrupted, trapped in reaction, lawlessness, war, dissatisfaction from bowels to core, devil's technology, strategy for, human mythologies, urban folklore, sicker psychology, counterfeit cure, wicked theology robbing the poor, scheme demonology, mislead the pure, stricken strategically studying war. Light shown in darkness, image exposed. Few can see through the new emperor's clothes. Lustful, this hustle turns humans to hoes. When the blind lead the blind, just more trouble and woes. It's the mind that they chose, it's designed to stay closed. Standards of jokers, court just the logic. Cyclic and cosmic from schoolyard to college. Primitive man in his civilized knowledge. System collapse and he still won't acknowledge. God is the savior, studies behavior, trying to fix the mixed mind that he gave you. Stiff-necked scholars on prescription meds, wishing their problems was all in their heads. Moral dilemma, pride at the root, misguided from youth, heart divided from truth. Egyptians and Grecians, spiritually dead, empirically led by the good gods in their heads. Motives and thoughts, industrial wealth, global economy in it for self. Heart full of madness, covered with kind, pleasure designed to take over your mind. Furnished in godliness, painted in good, this tainted priesthood's got real saints misunderstood. While classes and government set up the veil and cultivate minds for more mythical tales. Typical Hollywood, follies, good girl, while vice and corruption take over the world. Motives and thoughts. Check your motives and thoughts. Blind with the wickedness deep in your heart. Modern day wickedness is all you've been taught. Lied to your neighbors so you get ahead. Modern day trickery is all you've been fed. Motives and thoughts. Check your motives and thoughts. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. So I think that we're just going to be waiting for folks to come back, trickle back in after your break. Awesome. Hopefully y'all were able to enjoy that video. But let me see. So as we get back into talking a little bit more about participatory defense, we want to define what it means to engage in participatory defense in Orange County. We also want to talk about what are some of the principles that guide our work, because I think that as we speak about this community organizing model, we want to definitely share with all of you how powerful it is and how powerful it's been, you know, for us to be able to host this space as well as invite community members to join it. So I will go ahead and start introducing a little bit more about this community organizing model and how we have been able to embrace it. So participatory defense is a community organizing model that is centered on empowering people facing charges, their families and communities, to have an impact on the outcome of their cases and transform the landscape of power in the immigration, youth, civil, and criminal justice system. So as I kind of share that, I think that it's important to mention, you know, the importance of centering families and individuals that are impacted by any of these systems that criminalize them. And so the reality of empowering and having the families and those directly impacted lead is very important and central to our work, given the fact that as community members that are volunteering, we really want to uplift or support them in whatever way they see is important, and never us calling the shots, right? Because when we talk about impacting outcomes of cases, we want to take that lead of the family, right? And a win for any case can look very different, right? So it can either go from a criminal case, you know, so a community member going through the criminal justice system that might be facing 10 years, you know, a 10-year sentence. Maybe if we are able to intervene in different points, we are able to reduce that sentence, right? By relying on community power and community organizing to transform the power dynamic in the courts. In other cases, it might be, you know, we are able to achieve a win that means dismissing completely the charges that the person might be facing. In other cases, it might look like being able to support a community member and coming back home after being in immigration detention or after serving their sentence in the criminal justice system. So we do not define exactly what it is, the outcome, right? Because it will depend on every case. And also when we talk about supporting families and individuals that are impacted, family is a very broad definition that we have. It could be friends, it could be your neighbor, your community. So family in this context of participatory defense is not as society has defined it for us, but rather we encompass one more that is broader and welcoming of other folks. So as we introduce this, I think that I'm gonna briefly talk about the image that's on this slide, and that is of Hugo, who is the young man that's at the very front with the sweater, burgundy kind of sweater, his mom, Rosalia, and his dad, Hugo. Hugo is a DACA recipient who last year in August, actually, August of 2019, he got stopped and arrested by Highway Patrol, and he was being charged with a DUI. And so his family and him came to the participatory defense space, and we were able to be there since the very beginning of the case, right? So we were going with his family and Hugo to support him at his court dates. We were speaking with the public defender that was assigned to his case. And it really took many, many meetings with the public defender and also showing up to court, submitting letters of support, going there, the community to show that we were there for him to impact an outcome of his case. So in this case for Hugo, he was not only, you know, risking the possibility of losing his DACA status, but also the possibility of also facing deportation, right? So one of the things that we definitely did was engage him in the process of talking with the public defender. We also had to engage the district attorney. So as we think about rapid response and how the criminal and immigration justice system have become really entangled, oftentimes a lot of the legwork that we have had to do in Orange County has really been tackling the criminal justice system, addressing the district attorney's office, because we know that they hold enormous amount of power and they have a lot of discretion, right? And in Hugo's case, the DA was really reluctant to, you know, do anything else that served him justice in his eyes. So after, you know, doing a lot of advocacy, like I said, submitting letters, showing up to court every time, we were able to come to a term, you know, that the case was able to work out. So Hugo was able to get a plea deal that essentially was immigration friendly. He was able to keep his DACA, and you know, he still had to go to classes and everything, but the repercussions weren't as harsh because the community was there to support him. And one of the things, right, that when we talk about the power dynamic within the courts is that people feel really intimidated and oftentimes don't even know how to navigate the court system. So this community organizing model is really there to collectively think through, right? Like, how do we support one another? How do we think about ideas, not only to engage the public defender, but in this case, also reach out to the DA, right? So you have to be strategizing, but the strategizing doesn't only happen with the community organizers, but also includes the family in the process, right? Because as I've mentioned, we really take lead of what the family and the individual that's being directly impacted wants to do. So Hugo, you know, he was able to get a resolution that worked for him. And his family was really happy. Obviously, I think that throughout the meeting, some of the folks that are in this call, like Sonali, myself, Eric, who also isn't able to be here today, but we were going to court with Hugo and his mom every time that he had to go to court. And I remember his mom every time, the anguish that she had, you know, thinking like, what is gonna happen? Is the judge gonna budge? Is the DA going to work with us? They need to see him as a full person, right? And so I think that something else that I also want to add is that for participatory defense, whether the individual, the community member is navigating the juvenile justice, criminal justice, or immigration, the courts will only see the person as whatever the charges are, right? They want to paint them a certain way that doesn't reflect them as a full person. So this model really centers on like, how do we humanize the person, right? They are a community member that is, you know, might be going to church. They have great relationships with their sister, with their friends. Like, how do we build positive equities around that person so that the courts are able to see them as a full person, right? So this is just one of the stories. We'll later talk about some other ones, but the core of it is really to empower, take the lead of those impacted to impact the outcome of their cases. And like I said, every case will look very different, but it's being led by the family. So yeah, I do want to center that.
I want to add on there real quick.
Mm-hmm.
In terms like, what do we mean when it comes to engaging, and I want to call them actors, engaging these other actors, right? Like whether it's lawyers, the sheriffs, the DA. We don't talk about in terms of engaging. We don't talk like we're building community with them, because we're not trying to do that. And at least in my abolition framework, right? Like we acknowledge that like prisons shouldn't exist. We acknowledge that probation officers shouldn't exist. We acknowledge that all these, you know, ex systems that oppress people and they're anti-Black should not exist. And so when we think about engaging them, it's engaging them to get the win that our community member needs. And so they identify what the win looks like. Sometimes the win will be getting them out of detention. Sometimes the win will be getting them like some type of protection, whether it's DACA, asylum, or even expungement of those things. So the win may look differently, but it's up to the family to understand what that win will look like for them. So it's kind of giving them that agency of like what, and so sometimes it may be like a reduction of sentence. This person might have been sentenced to be in jail for like their life, and so the win could be reduced it to 15 years and opportunity of parole. And so at the core of this work, it's also understanding that, and then we won't be able to talk about this so much in detail, but we'll be sending out information for folks to continue to learn. But we understand that, and at least in our framework with participatory defense, is we're supporting those folks that are the most criminalized, the folks that are criminalized for DUIs and for you know, other cases that other public defenders won't take and that other folks won't take, and we support those cases, and we humanize people, right? Because at the end of the day, people make choices based on the social and economic environments that they live in. And so I think that's really important to kind of keep to hold on to, right? That we could still have that abolitionist framework, but also understand that there's different actors in the system that can help us leverage a win for that individual and a win for their family.
Thank you, Mao. And also now we want to transition a little bit to talk about some of the principles for participatory defense. And I feel like I have touched a little bit on some of them, but I will go ahead and, you know, just kind of reiterate some of the things that have already been mentioned. So family and community strength can play a role in stopping a deportation and get someone released from detention. So any work that we do is led by those directly impacted and their families, so that they are an agent of change, right, in their own cases. They can take ownership and decide, like, what is it that I want to do to make sure that I bring in the community to support me and ultimately impact the outcome of my case. So first responders or community volunteers that are interested in plugging in can provide that space where families can receive feedback, ask questions, and receive the support that they need to move their case forward. So whether that might be, and I'll give a quick example, if a community member says, you know what, I think that I would like to get the opportunity to talk to an immigration attorney about how taking a certain plea deal or taking a certain plea deal might impact the outcome of my case. Making that connection with that attorney, if we have those connections, really makes a difference at times so that that community member could get that second opinion to be able to do so. And I'll popcorn to Mao to do the other one.
Which other one was it?
Is the second bullet point?
A participatory defense space is not a substitute for legal advice or legal service providing. This is a community space intended to be led by families and not and for families, right? So we understand, as the first video that y'all got a chance to watch, like this model is like, it's just folks coming in to share that collective knowledge, right? Like maybe you had a homie or a neighbor that went through the juvenile justice system, and then that affected them, once they turned 18. And so then you already know how to go to the court. Or even as simple as like you'll see between families, like folks know who the spot to go eat at after you go to court, or like folks know which lawyers to fuck with and which lawyers not to fuck with. And so I think for us, right, it's that collective space of knowledge that folks come in with different experiences, lived experiences, and also experiences navigating these systems that we know we're like from the jump, we're like really hard, or from the jump they're made really hard for us to understand and even to navigate. And so like you'll even see, right, like people need to go and get like whole laws degrees to understand these systems, right? And so as folks, as working class folks, right, like our experiences through these systems and the injustices that we face inform some of this work. But that doesn't mean we're lawyers, but we do have the experience. And so I think that's something that really guides some of this work.
Yeah, and I think that just to add a little bit to that, I feel like oftentimes for folks that are attorneys that work within the system, oftentimes feel confined to think through that lens of like, there is so much bureaucracy, we can't do anything or whatever. I feel like the community coming together as a collective, we can think through, strategize, right, about being outside the box because we're the ones that are living through it, right? So I just wanted to mention that another principle that we truly value also in this organizing model is that community members that are interested in volunteering their time in supporting families, there is a level of commitment. So we're not just committed to, let's say, let's meet 1 week and I'll help you answer this question for you, and next week, or maybe we won't meet in another month. There's a commitment to the community that we have. And so we've invested a lot of time in ensuring that we always have a meeting space, that we always have, whether it's in the virtual space, whether it's physically. I know that we can't do that right now, but before it was physically when we were hosting the meetings in person, but that we're always coming together to answer, think through, strategize, like how do we support a community member through their case. So there is a commitment that is required, but I think that something that is very sacred, at least to our space, is that we always check in as a core team about our own capacities, because we know that often that can change over time. But I think that understanding that you're going in for the long run is very important. And so I'll pass it on again for the fourth bullet point.
Yeah, and so collective consciousness building with those directly impacted, their families, their loved ones, community members, and general public goes a long way in building collective power to take action and seek justice. So here is like where at least like as an educator, it's like, yo, like we're helping folks inform and we're building that political education that's needed, right? Like we're letting folks know, like, and folks already come with that understanding. Folks know, like, yo, let's not call the cops. Like, yo, let's not get caught. Let's run away from the cops. And so it's like collectively, we're all skill sharing and sharing those lived experiences and the knowledge that we have from those experiences. And so it's at least at the core, this space is to build collective knowledge and make space for that, right? Make space to know that our folks that might be coming in might be problematic, right? Or might have these understandings of the world, right? But it's also our job to collectively work through that. And that's where the real work happens. That's where you truly are able to humanize somebody and meet somebody where they're at. acknowledging that they've had their different lived experiences, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that they don't deserve the justice or they don't deserve to live in a place that prisons don't exist, that where prisons exist. And so I think that's something that at the core of our work is really, really crucial. You know, none of us here are savers. None of us are here are no more or anything like that. It's rather more of like, how do we develop people to get the win that they want, and then giving them the agency to kind of run with it. If somebody says, you know what, let's go straight into a campaign and let's advocate for this person's freedom and this person's on board, we say, you know what, fuck it, let's do it. You tell us what that looks like. And so it's giving folks agency, because oftentimes what you see in deportation defense work is you have a core group of people that will lead strategy, that will lead campaign, that will lead messaging, but it shouldn't be like that, because we should be giving the agency to the folks that are directly impacted. And I understand that, right? Because I'm directly impacted. So, you know, oftentimes like your own experiences inform this work. And so, and then with that being said, mutual aid is at the core and it's the driving force of our work. What the fuck does that mean? I will answer that for y'all. It's really, really, really important. This collective here, the Orange County Rapid Response Network, we're all volunteers, with the exception of a couple folks who are paid. And so this work, right, is all volunteer led. It's grassroots. We're not tied to any nonprofit other than our physical sponsor. But mutual aid is really at the core of our work, right? And so I'm gonna go ahead and define what mutual aid is. And this definition comes from the Students for Quality Education in Long Beach. And so solidarity plus community care equals mutual aid. So mutual aid is a voluntary network of people who give and receive resources, skills, and services. Under mutual aid, community comes together, recognizing that the government and larger institutions are unable to provide us with basic needs. In order to combat isolation and provide for the most vulnerable in our community, mutual aid networks are established to take care of one another. And how does that show up in our participatory defense space? Like we've had literally like mothers in our space that will literally bring food for the space. We have folks that will literally bring like even music. Like I like to incorporate music into a lot of our spaces. We'll have folks that will bring literally like physical labor. We'll have folks that will bring monetary supplies. And so oftentimes mutual aid can, and the way we understand it is not just like monetary. Sometimes it's knowledge, it's skill sharing, it's experience sharing. It's like, it could be so many things that that oftentimes we conflate, but honestly, it's just like being able to be in solidarity with folks, and to, if you have access to resources, making sure that that other folks have access as well. It could be like sharing your Zoom account so people can host the meeting. It could be literally giving somebody a ride. It could be it could also be even art, like literally like, yes, that's a really great a point too, because like even artistic, right, the folks that do our media, folks that maybe will do be actions, or folks that will be creating our logos or creating graphics, and art shows up in different spaces. It could even be wellness, folks that do wellness work. And mutual aid is just so vast in its definition, but it allows us to create a framework, because we know that these government institutions are not meeting our needs. They're not holding us down. We're at the ground and we understand what the needs of our community are, because we're building community. And like I said, if you're not building community with folks in where you're living in, you really can't be engaging in this work, because you really truly at the core don't know or can't be in conversation as to what those needs are.
Thank you, Mao. So I feel like we have been obviously sharing, you know, some of the, how the model came to be, what are some of the principles and values that we hold. But we want to give y'all a picture of what it looks like to embrace this model, so that it's, you know, they're physical for folks to kind of visualize. So for us in Orange County, we hold participatory defense meetings every week. We host them every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And we always invite community members to come into the space and talk about their cases, right? So as we invite them to the space, as Mao has been sharing, really the folks that are being directly impacted are the ones that have a lot of knowledge about what to do, you know, after you get released from detention. What are the processes that folks have to follow after that? They give each other advice about You know, like how do I go about terminating probation? So it's a lot of skill sharing, knowledge sharing that only people that are directly impacted can know about and will know about. So like I said, in OC, we host those meetings on a weekly basis. And the way that we host the meetings is essentially, we welcome every week folks to the space, welcome attendees, and that includes the families, community members that are volunteers. We provide translation also in Spanish because that's a need that's necessary for the space. And so we provide translation, and some of us will exchange that role of like maybe 1 week I'll translate, somebody else the next week, and so on. We have somebody that will be note taker, another person that might be also facilitating the meeting. But the way that the meetings usually run, like I said, you'll welcome folks to the space. You introduce the community volunteers that are also there so the community can know who's part of the space. And you know, if they see anybody typing or anybody doing anything, they'll know who they are, right? So it's a sense for us to build community with each other. We also ask the families specifically that are coming in every week to provide updates about their cases and, you know, ask questions. Where exactly is it that they have questions or that they need support? So usually updates will be very general. We ask folks not to share any specific details about their cases, just very general updates like my loved one has a court, you know, in Santana at such and such time, and the support that I need is maybe transportation. So we outline what are the needs, what are the updates that you have, and then some of us will share that responsibility of like, you know what, I'm free during that time. I'll make sure to show up and you know, take community member or whoever it might be to the court date. So we lay out the expectations. We also, like I shared before, remind people not to talk so many details about their cases. That is just as a way to build confidentiality also about their case. And at the same time, one of the other things that we also do is always at the very end of every meeting, we send out the meeting notes that we took so community members can just be engaged in talking about their cases and not so preoccupied with taking notes. So Ivan, I don't know if you want to share some of the rules that are part of the space.
Thank you, Anna. I think you hit everything that I wanted to touch on. As Anna mentioned, we oftentimes, or most all the time, take the initiative the families share, and our role is simply in connecting, advocating, supporting the families and their loved ones. Oftentimes, they come to us looking for support, and it's important to recognize that the support is something they make themselves. And as a personal philosophy, I think the best thing you can be is an advocate for yourself, and the next best thing is an advocate for others. And these families continue to embody that.
Exactly. And I think that something else that I quickly just want to emphasize is that within participatory defense, everybody has a role. So I don't have, you know, I'm not the one that's calling the shots. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, all of us bring something to the table. So community, you know, skill sharing is really valuable in this space. So anybody that comes in, you know, being a note taker, whatever it might be, you always bring something to the table that is very important to share with everyone that's in the space. And so something that I also want to highlight is that this community space has really been important. And a case that I will quickly highlight is of a community member who, his mom, he's a young man that was detained in Adelanto. And while he was detained, his mom would attend the meetings every week. She was there, you know, every week with a packet of notes of information to build up on his case, right? Because she wanted to ensure that when her son was up for a bond hearing, that she had all the necessary information that she needed to be able to provide that documentation to the attorney, you know, and get her son home. So she was there every week. We were there trying to figure out, you know, who from this space is able to be a sponsor, you know, for this young man that's gonna get released. And we were able to work out all those details with the community support that was attending the meeting every week. And, you know, after the young man was able to get released from detention, he also joined the space. So he was coming in, he was super thankful, you know, because of all the advocacy that his mom did for him while she was outside. And, you know, he began attending the meetings, getting to know all of us. And one of the very beautiful things, I think, is that we have seen this young man grow into also his leadership that I believe he always had. He's helped us facilitate meetings, also given his own experience as to like what it was like to be in detention and how do you advocate for yourself while you're in detention. And so he's been just somebody that has grown a lot and that we definitely value in the space. And yeah, but I think just to sum it up before we move to the next slide is like how powerful it is to have everybody involved. And like I said, everybody that comes in has a role. So none of us, you know one more than the other, but we can bring something to the table that can expand our collective knowledge. So having said that, we do want to provide the opportunity to kind of show an example of how participatory defense looks in action. And I will pass it on to Emily and Felicity, who will guide us through this exercise.
Hey everyone, my name is Emily. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. I just want to start off before I even start introducing this case study. It's really hard to condense everything we do into like a quick 2 slides, just because like it's been said over and over again, we follow the community members' lead. So like if we need to spend 45 minutes on a case, then we will, and if we need to go over time, then we will, and try to meet as many needs as possible. So this example is going to be super short and does not do justice to like what happens in real time. And even like as we've gone virtually, we've kind of modified how our meetings go. So just keep like bear with us. But this is just to give an example of how we more so provide resources and the guiding questions that we kind of use to facilitate the case. Felicity, I don't know if you want to quickly introduce yourself and then we can start with the case study.
Sure. My name's Felicity Figueroa. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And I'm going to be Susana. I think Emily's going to outline this is a fictitious case that we've just put together kind of to give you an example of what participatory defense actually looks like.
Yes, so Susana joins the participatory defense space, so one of our weekly meetings to get support with her husband Jaime's case. Susana got introduced to our space by calling the hotline when he was detained by ICE outside of their home in Santana, and then was referred to the meeting by a first responder. And we kind of gave a quick overview of like that initial contact and getting that important information before entering the space so that we have a better context. So the needs and follow-up that we'll be addressing is she knows that the next court hearing is July 12th. She needs to secure a lawyer and also would like support with money for rent and other essentials. So this is kind of like, again, very quick, like what we need, or not need, but like do to help facilitate the meeting. I'll be the facilitator. Emily, the note taker, will be Ivan. And then obviously Felicity will be Susana and other volunteer will be Anna. And we also, again, like anyone in the space, including the families, can support and ask questions. It's not just the volunteers that are offering support or information. So I'll get started. Susana, hi, welcome to the space. We're really happy to have you here. And thank you so much for joining us. Can you give us some updates about where your case is at?
Sure, and thank you so much for inviting me here because I really didn't know what I should do. So my husband Jaime was picked up. I didn't know where they'd taken him, but he called me yesterday and said he was in a place called Adelanto and that he has a court hearing on July 12th. And he also gave me a number that he had been given, an A number, I think.
Okay.
But that's all I know.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. Do you know what type of court hearing it is yet?
No, I didn't know there were different types. He just said
Okay.
he had a hearing there.
Okay. So one of the things that we can do is I can give you the number for the Executive Office of Immigration Review. It's an 800 number. And if you have the A number, we can call and get more information about the case. Is that something you would like support with?
Yeah, I don't think I could do it by myself. Could one of you help me?
Yeah, I can check in with you before you leave today. Another question I wanted to ask you is, do you have legal representation for your husband's case or not yet?
No, I didn't know we'd need a lawyer, and we don't have money for a lawyer. We never thought this would happen. So I don't even know how to go about looking for a lawyer.
Okay. Do any volunteers know of resources that we can support Susana with for legal representation?
Yeah, I think that we definitely have a list that we've compiled with different pro bono and private attorneys that we can share with Susana to maybe, give them a call and try to see whether they're able to do legal representation for her husband.
Okay. Anna, would you or any other volunteers feel comfortable supporting Susana with making that contact or writing an email?
Yeah, I can definitely help write that email, and also maybe we can take some time, Susana, to, set up a time to call the list of attorneys so that we can find one for your husband.
That would be great. I don't know how we could pay for it though, because my husband was the one who was working. I have a medical condition. I can't work, so I'm just staying home with my children. I don't know how much lawyers charge.
Okay. Yeah, I think when you meet with Anna, y'all can talk about the pro bono lawyers that we have reached out to in the past that support cases, and then if not, for the next meeting we can think through other fundraising or like other ways that we can get access to funds to support you. Does that sound like something that works with you?
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
Something else that comes to mind for me, Susana, is I know that you mentioned that you weren't too sure what was the court that your husband has coming up, but I think that regardless of whether we know or don't know, we can still probably work on gathering letters of support for your husband, because as you know, in a master calendar hearing, which is usually like the first hearing that someone has, they'll go before an immigration judge. Oftentimes what the judge will look at is not only, the immigration history of the person, but also whether the person has had any contact with the criminal justice system. And so they will be looking at that, right? And if we don't show any ties to the community, it might be harder for the judge to be able to see your husband, and all the community support that he has. So maybe what we can think through is potentially gathering letters of support. And, I don't know if folks can come up with potential ideas of who Susana can be reaching out to for letters of support, because I think that that's important.
That would be great. No, and my husband has never been in trouble with the law at all, not even a traffic ticket. So I don't know why he was picked up, but that would be great if you could help us out.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sorry, I just want to mention too, definitely get letters of support from employers, from community members, whether it is family or like folks in a neighborhood, as well. As the Rapid Response Network, we can also give you a letter on behalf of us, stating, that he is never been in trouble, he's a family man, whatever you need, we can provide that as well.
It would be, I can go to my church too. Maybe they can give us some.
That's a really good idea. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Anyone that you know would be good to get letters from, and again, I'm down to support you in creating that bio packet together, and we can think through kind of the narrative and being strategic with what we want to present to the judge.
And Susana, do you need any besides that? Like, do you need support with creating the bio packet? Like, do you need us to provide you paper to print, binders? Is there any things like that that you need?
Yeah, that would be great. If I can be in touch with you and you can help me fill that all out and tell me what I should do, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. Something else that comes to mind for me, Susana, is does your husband have any medical conditions?
He has diabetes, but he's been able to keep it under control up until now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like sometimes also gathering any medical records is also important because you never know whether the immigration attorney is able to use that strategically in the case. So if you have those records or can get copies, I think that that would be really beneficial.
Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also open to joining that meeting, and then kind of also explaining a little bit more what a social bio packet is, and then what else we can include. Susana, do you have any other questions for us, or any other support you might need?
Well, we do have to pay rent. I don't know if we have money for that, and I worry about the kids and groceries.
Okay.
So can I get in touch with you later? Is there a phone number where I can have any questions or?
Felicity. I mean, Susanna, which city do you live in?
I live in Santa Ana.
Okay, so there's actually an eviction moratorium until the end of July.
Oh, wow.
I would consider talking to the Group Tenants United Santa Ana to help you write up a letter in order for you to be able to postpone paying that rent in 6 months.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much.
So you can connect with me after the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Do any other volunteers have questions for Susana or anything that comes to mind?
No, I don't have any other questions for now.
Thank you so much. I feel so much better now. I really appreciate you guys are amazing.
No, Susana, it's all you. We really appreciate you getting support and trusting us with supporting you too. So thank you so much, and I'll make sure to email you what we talked about and also call you to follow up.
Thank you.
And scene. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I wanted to say is, like I said, that was super short, but also kind of it shows what we try to offer in the meetings, and we know that with depending on where folks' case is at, say it might be someone who has been fighting their case for years, they definitely always come up with the ideas as they are experiencing different things over time. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I think something else, if I may add, Emily, is also that there's always opportunities within the meetings to share knowledge and build knowledge with communities. So as I was sharing, right, like the master calendar hearing, that the judge looks at this information. So it's like sharing and building collectively so that the community is also building that, into their book, I guess, of knowledge. And, whenever the case is farther into it, usually that community member will sometimes take the leadership to share, oh, you know what, I've always, or I know this information now, let me share it with the rest of the group. So it's building collectively, and it's just sharing space with the community to talk through their case. Okay, so I think
Anna, may I add something?
yes, go ahead,
Okay.
Jackie.
I know that this was just one example, but I just want the potential volunteers and people that are learning that the capacity to volunteer is different. For some people, their need might be a translation, so someone might feel more comfortable assisting someone with the translation or writing a letter. Sometimes it's a ride. People need a ride to their hearings. Sometimes people might need someone to go with them. They just want the physical support of someone being there. So the capacity to volunteer varies. And so I just want people to know that that's kind of repeating what has been said is sharing your skills, and different people can plug in and volunteer in different ways and in different capacities.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And so I think that with this, we'll continue moving forward with the presentation. And we want to talk about some of the tools of intervention, right? Because I think that a very important statistics, at least that is central to Orange County, is that in Orange County, 75% of the people that find themselves in custody of ICE is as a result of a transfer from local law enforcement to ICE. And 25% is usually ICE conducting community arrest. So we know, at least in OC, that our central focus is not only being knowledgeable about the community arrest that ICE is conducting, but also finding ways within the criminal justice system to intervene and really have an impact on the case. So there are different ways that we can intervene as a community, whether that is through non-legal ways, legal ways, you know, if we're in connection with an attorney, through advocacy, and also sharing community resources. So through this conversation that we'll have, we want to talk about some of those tools of intervention that we have been able to use in OC. So I'll pass it on to Sandra, who will be sharing a little bit more.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra, and I'm the program coordinator for the Orange County Justice Fund. We, on our end, try to help folks in the participatory defense space and throughout the community inform themselves about ongoing lawsuits against ICE in which they can put their loved ones under as members. So for example, one lawsuit that we have is the Freight Hot versus U.S. ICE, which is a motion for a preliminary injunction requiring ICE to take measures such as custody determination for detainees with risk factors. So this would mean that if your loved one is in detention and they have diabetes or they have heart disease, they have asthma, they would be able to qualify or be considered under this Freight Hot lawsuit, and that could be an avenue for release from detention. And so as OC Justice Fund, like, our goal is to get folks out of detention as soon as possible. I do want to share like somewhat bad news, like one community member that we know, they were getting the wrong medications in detention, and it was like honestly very timely to get them out because that medication was harming them so much that it made them have a cardiac arrest. So for us, once we get the bond request in, we try to get like a 1 to 2 weeks turnover rate of getting folks out. We prioritize folks in the participatory defense space as a form of mutual aid because we know that folks in that space, families are helping other families, and so we always try to prioritize them because we know they've given so much to our community and we just want to give back to them. Another ongoing lawsuit that was spearheaded by one of our community members here in OC, the Hernandez Roman lawsuit, was spearheaded by him, he is a Salvadoran community member, and he and other detainees basically were making the case that they are unable to socially distance within Adelanto, and they were not given masks, and they were just not, ICE was not doing enough in order to ensure the safety of our community members. So basically this lawsuit was very successful in proving that ICE is just inadequate in what they do. And so we try, this lawsuit can put folks, prioritizes folks again with any health issues, but also folks that are already qualified for bond. Any folks over the age of 55, any folks that have mental health issues. So this is a more broader lawsuit than the one that I mentioned before. But also the one that I mentioned before, the Freyhut one, is really amazing because it's actually a nationwide lawsuit. So under these two lawsuits, we're trying to get folks out. I know a couple folks who we did phone zaps for in Adelanto are now free based on using these legal avenues. And finally, as the OC Justice Fund, we are able to give up to $5,000 to local community members with strong OC ties. And so we try to do our best to collaborate with the National Bond Fund Network and also Freedom for Immigrants in order to get the totality of those funds in order to intervene so no more harm is done to our community members.
Yes, and just to quickly add to the non-attorney legal interventions, there's definitely, and we want to continue to emphasize the fact that all of us bring something to the table and all of us can play a role even if we're not attorneys, whether that is just staying connected with community members that are being directly impacted by a case, right, that are coming to the space. So continuing to build community with them, supporting community members and putting together a social biography packet, which is essentially a packet that highlights the positive equities of a person. So we can do that as a community, right? As non-attorneys. We can also coordinate meetings or calls with public defenders or attorneys that the families might be meeting with, because oftentimes navigating these systems, it's really hard doing it alone, right? So how do we come up collectively with questions that the family can ask of the attorney to ensure that, you know, their loved one is getting the representation that they need? So coordinating calls, thinking through questions, participating also in community clinics to assist attorneys that are hosting community clinics around like bond, parole petitions. So calling up like sponsors, gathering letters of support for that person. So, and also system navigation. So if you're not able to, let's say, dedicate some time to write a letter of support yourself, you can maybe support with engaging in Court Watch when that was a possibility, when we could do it in person. Supporting with going with someone to their ICE check-in, probation, helping a community member find out how they could get police report. So all of this is to say that news that we as a community can help with, you know, and ultimately, hopefully impact the outcome of a case. So having said that, we do a lot of those things in participatory defense, and part of it also includes advocacy, and Sandra will share just a couple of things about what we have been able to do in OC.
All right, so on the left corner, we have a graphic we made for Adan's restitution fees. Adan's mom was able to come to the space really early on last year and continue fighting for him. Like as soon as he was bailed out, we found out that he has these restitution fees. So we were able to circulate this along with his Venmo and also his ongoing clothing line, Free My People, FMP. Y'all can find it on Instagram. So this is one, and it's funny because a lot of these fees were the donations that we got for his restitution fees also came from a community kermes. We were able to raise like around $2,000. So next to Adan's on the right is one of the graphics that we made for Celia. We've tied Celia's campaign to the Ni Una Menos campaign because she has spoken out against the state's injustice and violence towards her and trying to separate her from her family. She also talks about her interactions with the police, and she feels overwhelmed because she's trying to best to provide provide the best living situation for children, and the state will not allow that. And so we spoke a lot about Latin American feminist movements, and she was inspired by the Ni Una Menos, so we went with it. And so next to the Ni Una Menos campaign, we have a picture of us at a check-in, the second check-in during COVID. We had to specifically prepare for this with masks. We had homies from IE abolitionists come through. And so it was really great to have folks come out and support her at this check-in. To the left bottom corner is a recent action that we had, call to action. This is a phones app to demand an end to ICE transfers here in Orange County. We had some insight shared with us that some community members may be in danger of being transferred out after being detained in jail. And so we knew that, you know, we had to get together and like really put the sheriff and SAPD on the spot. And so we made this graphic in order to pressure the police department. And it was really helpful. That individual did end up getting out just in time. Right here in the middle, bottom middle, we have the Free Alexis graphic. We made it alongside CIJA and Se la Chisme. And basically we're trying to advocate a phones app to get folks out of Adelanto. Alexis is actually out of detention. I think the mix of public campaign plus a strong legal strategy really came out a long way. And then finally on the right corner, right here, ICE was spotted in Santa Ana. We basically make these graphics whenever someone in the community identifies that ICE is there where they are, and we go as first responders to do an illegal intake to see what went down, to confirm ICE's presence, because as we believe, it's better to not create panic, and it's better to collect data and information before confirming anything. So this is one of our famous graphics right here.
Yes, and so I think that this slide on community resources, I'll pass it on to Adriana, who will be sharing a little bit more.
Hi again, everyone. So like kind of we went through the mock participatory defense like trial. So like we said, you know, sometimes people need access to food or they need access to just cash for rent. And we do have the Orange County Bond Fund. Let's say that the community member doesn't have enough money to bail somebody out. There are funds specifically in place for that. I don't know if I'm mistaken and someone can correct me, but I believe it's them that they are able to provide, I think, up to $5,000 for a bond, but no more than that. So there's that resource for community members to use. We also do have access to food pantries that we refer folks to if they do need groceries for their family. And the last one is the Health and Wellness Community Clinic that is done by the first responders for community members who are, you know, in the process or dealing with like someone's going through the immigration justice system. So in the past, we have done usually like by donation, we'll ask healers to perform either like acupuncture or dental cleaning. There has been, I believe, like eye checkups. We teach folks how to make their own like wellness kits, whether it is with like aromatherapy, like some mental health resources on like deep breathing and mindfulness. So right now with COVID, you know, we haven't been able to do that. So currently we're trying to figure out how to navigate this, like how to navigate it, you know, with COVID going on. So that's what we have, you know, some of the resources that we try to do. Again, we try to like approach support through as many avenues as we possibly can.
Exactly. And I think that just to quickly add something to that is also to mention that community support goes beyond just supporting someone through their case, but also sharing all these other resources, because not only is a person that's detained or behind bars being impacted, but also their family that's outside. So connecting them with as many resources as we have access to is very, very important to do this community work. So as we mentioned, these are just some ways that allow for us to intervene, part of it in the legal system, and also connect folks to as we're organizing outside. But I think that now we want to definitely share with you all some of the stories of our community members that we have been able to support through participatory defense. And so I'll pass it on to Mao to share with you all.
Awesome. And yeah, like when it comes to resources, right, and folks wanting to get plugged into this work, like again, it's like the intention of building those relationships with people in your community to be able to plug people in, whether it's, whatever region that it is, like you're making this intention to build those resources that involve around housing, food, health, reproductive justice, like any type of those resources that you think community members will need, is making sure that they get plugged in. And if, like, let's say you're involved in autonomous space like this, but you work at a nonprofit, maybe coming to this nonprofit and be like, yo, like, we know you have hella money, spare that money for the people. And so I think that's something that's really important when it comes to creating these models. But yes, some of our community stories, like, I just want to highlight and emphasize, based on the first video that we saw, that a lot of this work and a lot of folks that are leading deportation defense work are all, like, what we've seen in our spaces have been like women, femme-identified folks, queer folks, gender non-conforming folks who have been at the forefront of supporting these cases and have been like the ones to, like, literally when and I'll talk a little bit about Adan. When Adan was released, right away, a week or two into the meeting, his mom was like, here's your packet, I'm gonna let you take the wheel, I've been fighting this fight for a long time, it's your turn to fight your fight now. And so, right, like, this space and like a lot of our stories that we have here and that I'll have a chance to share with you have been really, like, empowered by the collective work and the importance that our work remains autonomous. There's no ownership of this work. We don't take ownership of this work. It's all the family, right, that leads this work and that gives agency to these folks to kind of drive that message. And so let's talk about Alexis, right? Alexis was somebody who was just released, and like their partner, who's also another woman who was leading this case, right, fought hard, kept us as a collective accountable, made sure that we were, like, following up, that we were helping with campaigns. And luckily, right, like about a week ago, he was able to be released from detention. And so now, right, we had somebody from our collective pick him up. We brought a little care package for them. And so it's been really, like, nurturing, right, to also hear from folks, right, that, like, they've been in this fight for a really long time, and to see that there's collectives that have their back. Not only, like, we're not only just supporting folks as they're in detention, right, but it's also like, how do you support folks post detention, right? Like, how do you nurture folks post detention? Because oftentimes, if you're undocumented, you really don't qualify for a lot of these, like, post detention support services, right, because you don't have a social security number. And then we have Celia, who's another really dope person in our space, who has driven a lot of our messaging too, right? Like, Celia is fighting deportation case proceedings. If y'all look up the hashtag Keep Celia Free, or if you go into our Instagram, you can learn a little more about that story, how you could support that story and sign her petition. But her fight involves around, like, reproductive justice as well, right? Like that ability also, how she's been criminalized because of that. And so her case kind of deals a little bit, not to go into much detail, but, like, literally some white person calling the cops on her, and then her being transferred to immigration, almost losing her children to the foster system, being in detention and now coming back. And she carries this message of, like, telling our community members, like, we need to stop calling the cops on each other. Like, we need to be checking in with folks, or we need to not mind our business. And so, like, she's driven that message and has kind of been at the forefront of what that looks like, of how can we reimagine community safety without the police, right? Because fuck 12. And so, yeah, if you want to get more involved with that campaign, please look up hashtag Keep Celia Free. And then we have Adan. Adan was somebody who was being supported by his mother. And, right, like, our folks are criminalized. So a lot of our work is working to decriminalize people, right? To decriminalize.
Is this Alexis, Mao?
Huh?
Alexis?
No, I'm talking about Adan.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah. And so Adan, right, he was being supported by his mother, right, throughout the whole process. And like, to be quite frank with y'all, like halfway through the process, I got a chance to actually work with his mom, and his mom came to me and was like, I'm making a list so when I pass away, which is because she was like, I can't bear this. I want my daughters to take on this case. And so like at that point, right, like this work really does tire you out when you're somebody that's directly impacted. And so, you know, like a couple weeks after that, we had found out that Adan was available to be released in bond, and that completely changed just like the things that this family was going through, right? And then they felt empowered. And so a lot of this work that this mother led was like making sure that we were fundraising for the bond, making sure that we were carrying the message, making sure that once Adan was released from detention, that he had access to resources. And now Adan is actually part of our space. And if y'all were a part of the Mutual Aid Thought Organizer Collective, y'all got a chance to hear from both him and Celia. But that now is the plug for our folks who are now coming out of detention and need jobs. Like Adan is hooking them up. And so, right, like as we're creating these networks and we're empowering folks are now building the network within themselves to support each other, because right, like no one got us like like our community. And so, you know, if y'all want to plug into Adan has actually, he's a cultural worker. He designs and creates t-shirts and logos. So if y'all ever want to tap in with him, his hashtag is right there. Free my people. He's dropping a line of booty shorts for the summer. So hot girl summer. So if y'all want to tap into booty shorts, make sure y'all tap in with Adan. But yeah, like these are just a few of our community stories. Hopefully, right, like in another trainings, y'all can get a chance to hear from him and to hear from other folks. But this model works because we give agency to folks that are directly impacted, and because we provide them the support along the way. And so autonomy, mutual aid, building community, like we onto something. And so I really hope that folks can look more into these models and really reflect as to how you can adopt them to really make sure that that folks are getting the support.
Yes, thank you so much, Mal, for sharing. So after sharing a little bit of the stories, we definitely want folks to reflect on what they have been, you know, experiencing as you go through the training. So I'll pass it on to Irene, who's gonna lead us on some reflections.
Hi, y'all. This is Irene, she, her, hers pronouns. And Anna, actually, if we can come back to the reflections and then end it with the reflections, I kind of just want to skip over to the next slide. So as all you know and you've heard, most of this work isn't possible without the support of the community. So we got us. And time again, these systems have proven to fail us, and they continue to fail us. They exist to oppress us. And so I do want to put this out there and say, like, if you do find if you're white and if you're an ally, we're asking for your donations. If you have benefited from this training, or if there's anything that you can support, where this is our Venmo, all of these funds go directly to support the families, whether that's for their bail funds, their self-care needs, their well-being, rent assistance. I mean, some of these folks are the breadwinners of these families. And so once they are no longer to provide, then they leave family members behind. And so this is where this immediate funds come into play. We've also got some teas. So I just kind of want to plug this in. We've got a We All Belong free tea. Some of our members have these teas as well. Anna, if you're able to kind of like show your tea. So we've got these teas for sale as well. That's our Venmo. Let us know if you're interested in either a tea, or we'll take the donations as well. Again, all of these funds go directly to support the family's care. We usually share their Venmo, but sometimes it's more of I need help with food, I need transportation. And so this is where these funds come into play. And did I mention we live in a capitalist society? So money is absolutely important, and we all, these communities definitely need it. So now we can go back to the reflection piece. So we do want to allow these last few minutes. I think we're down time, but we want to allow some time for us to kind of come down and reflect on what we've learned and what we've heard. And we've got a lot of community members here who are plugged into their own communities, whether that be in the North Bay. I saw some folks from San Diego. I saw some folks typing in from Texas, from Arizona. So how do you plan to maybe incorporate this or take this back to your community, to the spaces that you're a part of? Maybe what skills can you bring into the participatory defense space? So we've heard from folks who are able to navigate these systems, these community members who have navigated the criminal justice system and criminal system actually, and then are able to partake and give back to our own community members, right? And so what are those skills? What are thoughts that have come up for you? And how does your contribution look like to the movement? Whether that's from a space within the court system, whether that's from a space from literally grassroots organizing, how does that look like for you? And we also want to allow some time for feelings, emotions, if you want to share. So our chat is open. We will be moderating that and taking a look at that. And any questions that maybe are coming up for you right now, we'd like to hear you out. And then Anna, in just a few seconds, I mean, we can leave it at the last slide.
Perfect.
So this is kind of the time for you if anybody wants to share anything. How much for the shirt and bucket hat?
Yo, so someone shared the handle. But I'm pretty sure the bucket hat was $20. But I'm gonna put the handle right here so y'all can DM right now.
And then let me just do a quick, so this is one of our teas, so we all belong. Free is this tea here. Anna's got a community, we will provide tea. Because it's literally what we do, right? We literally, the community consistently, again, time and time has shown us that only we got us, and it's the community who show up, and we need each other, right? It's the mutual aid that we've been talking about. Can we share our IG if we want to build an online community? Yeah, absolutely. So we were seeing some folks kind of on the group chat share their area. So if you want to maybe create a signal, if you want to tap, get on Instagram, I think a good place to look would be our Instagram and type those names in if you're interested. Also dropping the handles right now.
Yeah, if folks have any questions, just feel free to unmute yourself if you're able to. Just we really want to make sure that we get it some time to hear from you all.
You know, that's okay too, right? Because it's a lot. It's a lot of work. One of the things that we constantly see, and we hold each other to, is our own capacity to be able to navigate this space, because it is a lot of work. But it's hella dope to see family literally showing up for family, community showing up for community. And like Michelle shared here, it says, I didn't think I had a lot or anything to give, but learning how to support by setting back and listening to people who are impacted raised my ability to think about next projects. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure, Gloria. So we're in Orange County, so we've got our community community members, volunteers there from Fullerton, Santana, Costa Mesa, Tustin. So for sure, if you want to plug in with us directly too, definitely, or even have your own hub out in North Orange County, for sure. Yeah, Ilse. That's my sister, yo. So For sure, yeah, Rapid Response Network in the North Bay, absolutely. I think that's the type of work that we want to do, right? We're sharing this model so that other folks can tap into from their own communities. And obviously, if any of like my team members want to jump in, please.
I was just going to say what's so emotional sometimes about the participatory defense. Like just this last Wednesday, we had somebody in the room, and during our session, there was a call in. Actually, Sandra called in and connected her with her son who had just stepped out of detention. And he says, "Mom, I'm out." And she was so emotional, and everyone in the room got emotional. And those are the moments that make it all worthwhile. I mean, it's just a real personal, very fulfilling and satisfying experience. Very rewarding. Highly recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Janelle.
Yo, Janelle, that's messed up. Who's saying that you're not good enough? Like, anyone can do participatory defense. That's why it's beautiful. Like, anyone can do anything at any time for participatory defense.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone
Hey, that's
has their
right.
abilities.
Like the academy, you don't need a degree to be doing this type of shit. Like, honestly, y'all, like, as long as you have the resources, you're able to build community with folks, and you're willing to learn and unlearn a lot of this stuff. Like, it's a learning process for all of us, right? Like, I'm still learning, and I also think it's also really important, right? Like, at least for me, right? A lot of this work is really important because it also connects to me to the Black Lives Matter movement, to the Black uprisings that are happening, right? And it's important that we acknowledge, right, that how do we organize with Black folks, right? And what does that look like in our spaces? And so as we talk about decriminalizing, right, that's also work that needs to happen, right? We need to defund the police, we need to defund ICE and all these systems that are kind of that exist that cause a lot of this harm. But yeah, we really enjoyed and loved being in space with y'all. It's really empowering to kind of see so many people wanting to just kind of engage, right? Because we're at a time and point period where folks are looking for alternatives, and folks have, you know, looked into us for that alternative. And so we're really appreciative of that. And so we will also be sharing a survey post this presentation so that folks can get a little bit more feedback, and then we'll be sharing some resources to continue to build and learn from this space.
Yeah. Do we pass it on to Roberto? Roberto, are you still on the call maybe, so that as we close out, you share a little bit about what will be happening next week so that folks, you know, can come back and join us next week?
Great. Yeah, we're going to close and close the recording soon. Thank you all so much for your contributions. Thank you so much to the Participatory Defense organizers who led today's call. We're getting so much good feedback, and you know, this is a collective work, and you know, it's really great to have these trainings and so much participation, and seeing where our work is going to be heading with all of you part of our work, you know. Yeah, so next week we're going to have Guadalupe from Dignity and Power Now talking about healing justice in rapid response work. So much of what we're responding to is state-sanctioned violence. And so, you know, how do we deal with the trauma that we're experiencing as community members, but then also in working with folks that are experiencing trauma as well. So we're going to be at the ROC office next week. We're going to send out an email reminder. So we're going to be making medicine. So you can stop by the ROC office and pick up some medicine that we're going to, for our next workshop that we're going to, Guadalupe is going to, for an hour, talk about sort of healing justice. And then for the last 30 minutes, we're going to be making medicine. I'll include the email and the address. We're doing this COVID safe. So, you know, please wear masks. We're going to have hand sanitizer there. And we're going to be outside. So there's free flowing air. You know, if you don't show up to pick up medicine in Santana, you know, that's totally cool. Please still show up to the workshop. There's going to be great information. The following week, we invited Jacqueline Dan from the Public Defender's Office talking about immigration consequences. So many of our community members go through the criminal justice system. here in Orange County, 75% of all arrests by ICE originate from the criminal justice system and local law enforcement agencies transferring folks over to ICE. So when we say abolish ICE, that means putting into question the injustices within the criminal justice system, right? Working to hold the DA accountable, working to hold the sheriff's department accountable, working to hold the board of supervisors accountable. All of these systems work together to build the infrastructure to detain and deport community members. So immigration consequences in the criminal justice system is one of the ways that we can intervene in these processes. The following week, we have William, who's going to be doing some zine making with us. And so much of our work is around cultural workers and what roles do cultural workers play in reimagining a world we want to live in, right? I think our current reality, the world around us is falling apart, but here in this space, we're building community, we're building those new possibilities of what's possible. And so cultural workers help us paint sort of a picture of what is possible. They make it a reality for us. So William will be helping us to sort of do some movement, some art for the movement. And then we also have Annie Lai from the UCI Immigrant Rights Clinic. The UCI School of Law has a clinic that focuses on, trying to understand these intersections and from the immigration and criminal system. And we're going to be teaching, there was a slide that went on like non-attorney legal interventions. So we'll go a little bit deeper into, a lot of us are not attorneys, right? And that's totally fine. I think that there's a lot of knowledge that we bring into the space. And sometimes even attorneys can be very limiting in regards to how they see things, right? And so as organizers, as community members, we provide that perspective of like, we need to push boundaries, we need to push on these systems, right? And so Annie Lai is going to provide us with non-attorney legal interventions that we can take to sort of, intervene in these processes. So those are the trainings, and continue to follow the Instagram of the Rapid Response Network, our Twitter and Facebook for the latest information. So once again, thank you all for joining our call today. We started off with around 90 folks. Right now we're at 60. Thank you to the Participatory Defense organizers for putting on such a great workshop. And that'll be it. Thank you all so much. We're going to stop the recording now.